Welcome to Made to Dream, where we share stories of how young women and young girls can be inspired to dream with unlimited possibilities. I'm your host, Maya Chanel, and today I have the pleasure of being with Natsune Oki. She's all the way from Japan, so I am sure that you guys will be excited and just thrilled to hear about her story. So I just want to give her a chance to introduce herself. And Natsume, go ahead and tell the people about yourself.
Hi, Maya. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, this is my pleasure to have a chance to come on your show and introduce myself. So, my name is Natsune. I'm an author of the book called The Game of Self-Domination, which is going to be released on August 27th. So, it's next month. I'm also a host of Life Up Education TV. This is a TV show that I'm building. It's themed by possibility of humanity. That's the big theme I live by. So basically in the show, I interview high achievers and I talk about science and arts of science and arts of success. So we'll break it down, what makes successful people and high achievers as they are from the perspective of arts and science. So that's a show I'm building, and I also have a business in Japan where it's called the Foreign Connect organization, and I help Japanese companies to enter American market by connecting them with local businesses, specifically in 3 different functions. I help them with doing basically like founding a new company, so startup incubation, and also selling abroad, which is e-commerce, tied with e-commerce. And then the third thing is digital transformation, because this is something that Japanese companies need to make a lot of change compared to especially America. So that's something that I help them with. And before I get to this point, I lived, studied, and worked in America. I was born and raised completely, like all my, I guess, early adulthood I spent in Japan. And I finished my degree in business and economics in America. I also got to work with a lot of innovators, entrepreneurs, and investors from Silicon Valley and Seattle, just like, technology place. And I had a chance to learn a lot from that. But yeah, that's kind of summarizes my background.
Okay. So, I mean, we're here to inspire, we're here to encourage and empower. We want to know what got you to the point where you are now. What can you attribute most to getting you to the pathway of success that you are on now?
So when I look back, I think one thing about me that's for sure, because I'm still I'm also young, woman, just trying to figure out for herself too. So, but there's one thing that's very certain about me, which is I'm courageous. So looking back, I have always chosen a path of courageous decisions. So for example,
stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yes, exactly. I mentioned this in my book, for example, as my bio, is that I was almost I almost got kicked out in my high school because I was being quote unquote bad student. But it really wasn't about me being a bad student. It was about me being a curious person, me being following my intuition of curiosity and really being courageous about life, right? Because I wasn't afraid to be judged. I wasn't afraid to be framed as a loser, somebody who wasn't following rules. I wasn't afraid of that. My fear of not following who I was, not expressing who I was bigger than my fear of being failed, being a failure, right? According to the definition of the society at that time, which was Japanese society. So you can probably imagine there's a lot of.
I feel like it's the same over here in America. you're
Right.
frowned upon for stepping outside the box or doing something out of the ordinary. So I
Mhm.
think the narrative has to change, and people have to feel comfortable with
Mhm.
stepping out of the box,
Mhm.
being accustomed to making changes and not
Mhm.
doing what's normal to other people, doing what's true to yourself.
Mhm. I guess I did definitely see that this just common fear. It's a common thing among just human, right? Like I understand that,
Right.
but I think I
Mhm.
guess in terms of culture, I guess Japan has a tendency to impose this idea probably a little bit more strongly than if I were to compare to American. Like for example, something I learned about my own culture when I was working in the tech industry, right, is that
Mhm.
Americans are very good at innovation. You guys have Steve Jobs, you guys have like all this innovative company being born. And
Mhm.
Japan, whereas our business style is very industrial, like our business, I guess our human resources are
Mhm.
trained to be optimized for industrial era where
Okay.
we work like a machine. We're not innovative, we're not creative, we can't come up with our own opinions or own creative idea, but rather our education system set us up to be successful, to be part of the system, to work
Right.
like functionally,
Right.
if that makes sense. So for
No, it
example,
makes complete sense.
right, so we had all this like a big economic growth, but in the
Mhm.
era where we needed a lot of like industrial movement, right, like we were very strong in
Mhm.
that era. But then now we are kind of like losing our power, because in this generation what's needed is not necessarily the people who can work like a machine, people who are functional,
Right.
but rather you
You
need
need
to be
those
creative.
creative thinkers.
Exactly. So when I look at all these innovative San Francisco born companies, for example, like
Mhm.
compared to how much of new ideas and entrepreneurship is going on in America, compared to that with even Tokyo, which is like a metropolitan of like you know like a very high tech city, we have like a super super small percentage of how many businesses are born and how many innovative ideas are being
Mhm.
born, right? So we are good at taking stuff from America, like innovative ideas from America, and then we're good at
Mhm.
improving it. But that's like how we are trained in our education system is we
But
need,
not necessarily creating your own.
yeah, but then
Okay.
like work functionally, making improvement, like that's like in part of our culture. But
Mhm.
anyway, that being said, there's also pros and cons to that. But for me personally, for someone who's a lot more courageous, like someone who's, I guess, in funny way, I would say I'm a little bit too crazy to fit into that culture where you have all the rules and you have to be, I guess, so efficient in the picture of the society, which means that you can't go out of the picture. I just couldn't let that happen to me.
Right.
So come back to your very original question. I wanted to say that I have always taken my courageous path because I always had a bigger fear of not fully experiencing or expressing who I was
Mhm.
compared to other people's judgment, compared to like I don't care so much about people's opinion at the micro. I
Mhm.
care about people's opinion at macro, but I really don't, I guess
Right.
I'm crazy.
I think
Yeah,
I
I'm
understand where
crazy.
you're coming from.
Yeah. So I
So
think that,
basically, it's like I care about opinions, but at the same time, I'm not going to let it stop me from advancing in my career or my journey in life.
yeah. And then I had to tweak a lot, but because that's who I am. I had to tweak a lot about mindset around that, because that means that you're more vulnerable. That means that you're a risk taker. That means that you're more vulnerable to judgment. That means that you're unique, you would encounter more rejections, you would encounter more hardships. So you definitely need to develop different ways to look at life. So that's basically why I came up with my book. To come back to your question, I realized that because if I want to meet who I am, which I would take this quote from ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. He says, happiness is virtue activities of the soul, meaning that your true happiness is only met when you are meeting your true self, because you're challenged, you will be challenged. And only by overcoming these challenges, you're gonna meet your full potential. You are becoming who you really are by overcoming these challenges along the way. So I really needed to shift my mindset around wanting to stay with who I was and keep pursuing, keeping my perseverance to be who I was and accepting who I was.
Yeah, I do have a question for you. So I know that you were born in Japan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then moved to United States, and now you're back in Japan. So going from how you say everything is functioning in Japan, the whole mindset of the society, how do you feel like your mindset shifted once you came to the United States, being that it's more, like you'd say, innovative, more creative, more producing their own things and not necessarily copying others?
I think in that notion, I probably like the expression that I said about from Aristotle. I think to me it felt more right for me. I felt like as I was coming into the country, like America, I just felt like I was meeting my true self. Like I finally got a chance to meet who I was, because initially what really got me, I guess, almost failed at high school was because I had all these ideas and I had all this, innovative, creative ideas, curiosity. I was intelligent, like intellectually intelligent, meaning that I was curious. But then when I expressed that, I mean, I'm sure that people had it, but then they weren't courageous enough. They cared too much about what other adults might say or classmates might say, right? But I chose purposely to go in a different way. I just, I couldn't hold it. So anyway, I felt like I was just I was coming home to who I was as I was coming to the US. I felt more free. I felt like that was how I meant to be all the time. But once again, and another thing that was interesting about this whole experience is that when you live in a different country, like you have your own identity when you live in one country. Let's say your mother country, like where you're born, right? You have your own identity of who you are, who you think you are, and then you go live in a completely different culture. And then, it's so interesting. Like once you start living in the entirely different culture, you kind of relearn about yourself. Like something that you assume you had in a previous culture, which is your native culture, like that's going to be challenged. Right. Because, for example, for me, once again, like, what is it?
It's kind of like a fresh start for you when you come to another country.
Yes. And I always thought I was creative. I always thought I was expressive. I always thought, quote unquote, I was aggressive, like a more of a communicator. But then when I went to America, like it was another level. Like I wasn't even that expressive. I wasn't even that emotional, like compared to all the American friends I had. Like it was so crazy experience, because that time the whole perception of who I thought I was in Japan was completely like broken down. Like it was just like another realization, another level of realization about who I was. Like I was learning about myself once again from another perspective, and it definitely gave me more perspective about who I was. And one of the things I talk about with my book also is self-awareness. So the deeper the conversation you can have, the deeper the understanding you can really have about yourself. I personally believe that that has a significant impact in your mindset, like success of building mindset.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. If you don't understand yourself, I help people build their businesses. So it's like if you can't understand yourself, you can't understand your brand. You can't understand what you are trying to convey to people, what you're trying to sell to people. You can't brand your business without being totally aware of who you are and what is your complete purpose of doing this specific business.
Exactly. And I also, I'm a big fan, well, I wouldn't say big fan, but like for example, one of the concepts that I mentioned from my book, I talk about invisible hand, which is a concept from the father of economics, Adam Smith. And he talks about how economy is optimal when you have no government intervention in the system. And that I see it in life application too. What I mean is, you don't have to pretend. Like, I think a lot of people didn't have the chance to have a really deep conversation and find out who they are, like truly and deeply. Maybe some people feel the pressure of having to have that so that they start pretending, right? But then at the same time, like, I don't know how to explain. Like, it's, the world is balanced. So I'm a big believer of like not protecting. Like, yeah. So I'm gonna start with the fathers of economics, the Adam Smith saying about invisible hand, which is a concept to say economy is at the optimal when you have no government intervention. And I very much agree with that concept, even in a life implication. We were talking about self-awareness, right? I think self-awareness can be only created when you're challenged. Once again, coming back to the very first point we were making.
Building that character.
Building the character. And like, you need to challenge your thinking. You need to challenge who you are, and you need to like really think about what you like. Like, the more hits you get, you get closer to who you truly are, like knowing who you truly are. So I think a lot of time we try to pretend, or we try to like protect ourselves from potentially taking risks of failing, or potentially like from like any harmful point, right? Like any possible rejections or failures. But to me, self-awareness, the concept of like having the strong self-awareness, like includes the entire journey. Like you need to, like, sometimes suffering really helps you to have that really strong sense of self-awareness. And I think by all means, you should. Can you repeat? Sorry.
I said being self-aware, it helps you to propel yourself and grow and understand what changes need to be made.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I'm at with self-awareness. I think, failure is never about a person. Failure is always about event. And as long as you understand that, as long as you can bring your self-talk and narrative around whatever the hard things that happens to you, to think that failure is not about me, but failure is just an event that happens to the circumstance or to whatever the choice I made. But then I'm able to grow. I'm gonna win. Like when you know that about you, Like, you don't
Right.
have to be scared. You don't have to be scared to be hurt. You don't have to be scared to be rejected. You don't have to be scared to fail. And if anything, you should welcome that, because that's going to build your character, like you said. That's going to make you stronger. Right. And that's what's valuable. Like, there's no right or wrong answer once you go out and play in the market. Like, there's nothing that is like, has supposed to be this way, right? Like, you have only you as an asset. You can only rely on you at the end of the day. So don't you want to focus on being like a really truly capable person, then just, you know, I guess like a look good, like, you know, in the eyes of society, like, you know, but then really when it comes down to it, like when it comes to like a real like hard life problems, you can't solve it, then it really doesn't matter, you know? So that's, I think over time I was able to change my narrative around failures. And now that's kind of the approach I take, part of the approach.
Just having a more positive outlook on every situation. Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily think, like, I don't force positivity as a method. But it's more like it comes from, I'm optimistic. Like I never think something is like too bad. I'm very easygoing person, but at the same time, I think there's also beauty in embracing failure. There's also beauty in embracing embarrassment or humiliation, like desperation, like all these things sounds kind of like scary. But I think there's a beauty in that. There's a depth. It creates depth in your life when you are
because we can't learn. We can't learn if we don't experience failures or, you know, embarrassment or things like that. You have to learn from your mistakes, and that's the only way you can learn and you can grow as a person in your business, in your life, anything.
And yeah, I think being strong individual is possibly one of the most required thing for anyone who wants to be successful. Like, it really comes down to managing your energy, managing your mindset, managing your mind. And of course, you do need a vision and you need a resourcefulness. But I think what creates the resourcefulness and the vision is the mindset, managing your mind. Because when you are in the states where you're being a victim, or you're just bitching, like where you're, you know, looking at life from the angle where you say, oh, everything is impossible, like, you know, nothing can be done. As long as you stay in that place, nothing will ever happen. So really, I think, I mean, I've witnessed different ways of success, like, you know, succeeding, or different people who's succeeded or failed, and myself as well. And I think at the end, I kind of come back to this point where I think, wow, you know, it wasn't about science. I always thought there was like this secret, like algorithm, whatever, but it really, like in a life macro sense, like there's no secret. It's your willingness, it's your love, it's your passion, it's your, like, so the way I define love is like willingness. So I think the key here is you should have a self-love, meaning that the only person who's never going to give up on you is you. You need to gain the audacity to say,
you have to be your biggest fan.
Exactly. So you need to have the audacity to say, I'm never going to give up on myself. That's love. That's a self-love. And as long as you have that love, like really you can beat anything. Just make sure you're not going to give up on yourself. And I think it's really strong message. Like you need to, I think it really comes down to that.
Okay, so if there's one last thing that you'd like to say to inspire young women and young girls around the world to pursue their dreams and go after life possibilities, what would you say?
I say, because it's young generation, because the audience is young, I would say patient. I think patience is something that we lack in this generation a lot. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of that too sometimes, but
yeah,
we definitely, I think we need to have a patient. You know,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes
Patience
you
is
can't
key.
get any, yeah, validation from outside or even inside. Like sometimes it becomes so much harder for you to have the validation for yourself when you're not getting the feedback from outside, the feedback that you want from outside. But things take time. And also, you know, we need to look at it at more macro. Like, don't focus too much on micro. I mean, think about it, like really, like you're not gonna be here that long in terms of like life, right? Like in the earth, you're not gonna be here that long. So
enjoy your journey.
Enjoy your journey, make the best out of it, and patience is what creates like beauty in life, I think.
Right. So, well, we thank you for sharing your story with us. We thank you for being here with us today. And we just enjoyed every second of it. Well, you'll have all of her book descriptions, where to go purchase it. All of that will be linked below. And as always, thank you for joining us on Made to Dream, and we'll see you next time.